Everybody. Hope you're all doing well. I wanted to add a couple of videos here. This one is going to be about political participation. Specifically, it's going to be about the way we participate in politics by giving money, by spending money, which I know is everybody's favorite form of participation, right? Ask around and you'll find that most people will say that, what we really need in American politics is for there to be more money flowing into the system, right? No, of course not. People complain constantly about the amount of money in our political system. And as a matter of fact, if you ask most politicians what their least favorite thing about their job is, most of them are going to say fundraising. Everybody hates to do it. Everybody agrees that the amount of money in the system is a problem. So the natural question then is if everybody agrees that this is bad, or at least almost everybody agrees that this is bad, that we don't like it, that we think it's excessive, why doesn't anybody do anything about it? Well, the answer to that question in a word is because the Supreme Court has made it very, very difficult for anybody to do anything about that. Now, the most famous reason for this nowadays is the decision that the Supreme Court made in a case called Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission. Now, Citizens United obviously sounds great, right? Citizens United sounds like a good thing, because it sounds like the citizens are getting together and trying to do something. But of course, Citizens United was just a really good name for an interest group. An interest group that created a documentary. Anyway, you don't need to know the details of the case. The important thing about the case is the outcome. The outcome of the case is that the Supreme Court said that corporations and other organizations are allowed to spend unlimited amounts of money on behalf of political campaigns, right? So that comes down in 2010. So let me take you to, let me share a chart with you that I think does a good job of explaining what's going on here. So, wait, let's get to the presenter thing. There we go. All right. So hopefully everybody can see what we're looking at here. This is a chart showing the amount of money spent on political campaigns starting in 1960 and continuing through the most recent completed presidential campaign in 2016. And as you can see, things jump up pretty sharply here in the 2000s, right? So the 21st century has seen a huge amount of spending on presidential campaigns. You'll also notice that I have several little arrows pointing down at things. Those are sort of marking landmarks. So let's go back in time here to 1968 and 1972, right? So let's all hop in our time machine and go back to the days when Richard Nixon was running presidential campaigns. So Nixon first won in 1968 and then ran for re-election and won it in 1972. You'll note here that there's a pretty significant jump, right? The amount of money the amount of money both candidates spent, more than doubles, right? So the election of 1972 was more than twice as expensive than the election of 1968. And this had some people, kind of freaked out, right? People sort of had the thought that, we should really step in and do something about this. Also, if you know anything about Richard Nixon, you probably will know that he ended up resigning in scandal back in 1970, but anyway, he ended up resigning in the midst of massive scandals. And so there was a sense at the time that we really needed to do something, right? So you get massive campaign finance reform here in the early 1970s in response to this massive uptick in spending and the scandals that the Nixon administration ended up embroiled in, right? So Congress passes and President Ford signs a campaign finance law. Now, not everybody was happy with these campaign finance rules, and one guy, a guy named Mr. Buckley, challenged the law. He challenged the law saying, because the campaign finance law that Congress passed in the 70s was actually fairly powerful, and it contained a part of what it did was it placed a limit on the amount of money people could spend on presidential campaigns, right? They say that, right, so the law says you can only spend up to X number of dollars on a campaign. This was challenged as unconstitutional under the First Amendment. The argument was that the First Amendment protects political speech. And because getting your political speech heard requires spending money to, buy advertising and so on, right? Because you've got to spend money to get your voice heard. Spending money should be protected under the, right? Spending money on campaigns should be protected under the First Amendment. And the court ultimately agreed, right? So in 1976, the Supreme Court, in the case of Buckley versus Vallejo, said that spending money in the context of a political campaign is protected speech under the First Amendment. Right now, here early on, this is only doing this for individuals, right? Early on, we're only protecting the free speech of individuals, saying an individual can spend as much of their own money on a political campaign as they want, right? Fast forward to 2010, where the Supreme Court says that right applies to corporations as well, right? So corporations enjoy the very same free speech rights as individuals. And so, interestingly, part of the massive expansion of the amount of money being spent in campaigns comes from the fact that outside groups, right, groups who are not connected to the campaign have the ability to spend as much money as they want, right? Now, they're not allowed to give the money directly to a candidate. That would run against various corruption laws. But as long as they are not part of that candidate's campaign, as long as they are not acting with the candidate, outside groups can spend as much money in political campaigns as they want, right? And the reason for that is that the Supreme Court said first that individuals have the right to spend as much of their own money as they want. They said that back in 1976, and they expanded that to include not only individuals but also corporations in 2010. Now, interestingly, this also allows individuals, corporations to get together, and they can form organizations called political action committees. And those political action committees are, again, limited in terms of the amount of money that they can give to candidates directly, but not limited on the amount of money that they can spend in an election. Creating lots and lots of these kinds of organizations is oftentimes a good way of trying to hide where all the money is coming from. Money that we can't trace, money that we don't, where we can't say for sure where it came from. We call that in politics dark money. And so since 2010, we've seen a massive rise in the amount of dark money in our system, money that we can't trace back to any individual or group of individuals. So anyhow, again, to reiterate, and get out of the share here. So to reiterate, to the answer to the question, why hasn't anybody done anything about the amount of money flowing through our political system? The answer is we've tried, and the Supreme Court has said that we can't. So if you want to know why there are, if you want to know why we're going to spend more than $1 billion on this presidential campaign, the answer is the Supreme Court in the case of Citizens United. And if you've ever heard the phrase corporations are people, it's in reference to Citizens United. All right, I hope this helps, and I hope you're all doing well. Talk to you later.